Hello Year 10, I'm just going to talk you through some of the context for the next poem we're going to study, which is My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. I'll start off by talking a little bit about the poet himself, Robert Browning. You see a photograph of him there, and he lived between 1812 and 1889. So he lived during the Victorian period, and he was a really famous, really well-known English poet and a playwright, in fact. But he was best well known for being the master of something called the dramatic monologue. The dramatic monologue is a poem that is in the form of a speech, really, by an imagined person, in which the speaker in the poem often inadvertently reveals aspects of their character or reveals something about themselves or their inner thoughts. And that's what this is in this poem, My Last Duchess. So Robert Browning was one of the best known Victorian poets. To put that into context of the time period, he was writing at the same time as Charles Dickens. So if you wanted to find out more about that, you could look on your Victorian context sheet on your knowledge organiser for A Christmas Carol, and all the information there about what was happening at the time that Dickens was writing A Christmas Carol will be the same for when Robert Browning was writing My Last Duchess. And in actual fact, this poem was first published in 1842, which is around the same time as Christmas Carol as well. So very, very similar time periods. However, Browning was very, very interested personally in writing about different historical periods. So he didn't always write about Victorian times, the time he was actually living in. He wrote about different times in history. He was fascinated by the Italian Renaissance, which was between the 14th and 16th centuries. And there's a few reasons why that might be the case. Firstly, Robert Browning lived in Italy for many, many years. And so while he was there, he was probably consumed with the history and the culture and the stories in a way that perhaps you don't really immerse yourself in unless you've lived in a country. So he perhaps had a real interest in that time period from seeing all of the art and hearing all the stories. But also that time period was a time when the arts really flourished. And as an artist himself, as a poet, he was probably fascinated with the development of art at the time. In the poem My Last Duchess, Browning, this is also a dramatic monologue, and he writes from the point of view of Duke Alfonso II of Ferrara. So Duke Alfonso II of Ferrara being a region in Italy, was a real person. So we can see that here, this is the name of the person who's going to be speaking in the dramatic monologue in the poem. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, because the real person, Duke Alfonso II of Ferrara, he was living in the 1500s. And there's a lot of rumours going around about this Duke. And this is the juicy bit. So in 1561, the Duke of Ferrara's wife died under suspicious circumstances. And there were rumours going around that, in fact, she had been poisoned. So this story is what is believed to be the inspiration for Browning's poem, My Last Duchess. So although this is a really old poem in the sense it was written in Victorian times and it's set even earlier than that, it's set in the 1500s, it is still really fascinating because it's full of juicy gossip, speculation about what this Duke was really like. And the dramatic monologue is from the point of view of that very Duke. And Robert Browning imagines what might have happened and writes a poem about it.